Hello, this is Congressman Brad Sherman, live from Washington, D.C. We're about to start another one of our telephone town hall meetings. First, a little bit of logistics. Write down the following phone number, 855-920-0548. If we get disconnected for any reason, just dial that number and you'll be reconnected to our town hall. Again, that number is 855-920-0548. And our next telephone town hall will be in mid-July. I don't have the exact date yet, but you can go to bradsherman.house, that's for House of Representatives, so bradsherman.house.gov, and sign up for our next telephone town hall. You can suggest a written question and submit that on the website and RSVP. Now, I know there's a big Laker game. I'm recording it. Let's not have any spoilers. We planned this town hall well more than a month in advance, so we didn't know exactly on what day the Lakers would be playing. I was convinced they'd be in the playoffs, but I didn't know what day, and so here we are. And for all of those who have joined us, I know some of you are recording the game, or some are watching it in the background. Thank you for joining us, even though there's an important game. Now, another part of logistics. If you want to be connected to my fine staff, you dial *3. Now, if you happen to have a personal issue, you can talk to one of my staff members, particularly if you have an issue with any federal agency. Most people who dial *3 will do so because they want to be in the queue to ask a question that will be heard by our whole congressional district. Again, if you want to be connected with us, you dial *3. Now, we'll be taking questions orally. We also took some RSVP sign-in questions, and I'll be answering some of those tonight. I obviously can't answer a question from everyone who participates. We tend to have 3,000 or 4,000 participants in these. But you will be able to register your views because we will do a survey on 4 or 5 public policy issues, and we'll be sending out a press release tomorrow morning with those survey results. You respond to the survey just by pushing buttons on your phone, so you will be able to register where you stand on important issues, even if you don't get a chance to speak. Now, people have been joining us over the last few minutes, so I want to once again say this is Congressman Brad Sherman. This is our telephone town hall meeting. I'm honored to have been elected to represent the relatively newly drawn 32nd District. For many years, I represented the West and South San Fernando Valley, and now they have added to the district Brentwood, Pacific Palisades, some other parts of the west side. So if you're from the West or South San Fernando Valley, you've been getting these calls for years. If you're part of the new part of the district, this is probably your third time. We'll be continuing until 8:10 p.m. If we go beyond that, our vendor charges us a lot more money, so we will end it at 8:10. The governmental structure in the United States is very complex. It was designed by people who feared concentrated power, and that's why so many issues are not dealt with by the federal government. That's why we have guests on these telephone town halls from state or local government. Today we have Councilwoman Traci Park, who is newly elected to represent Brentwood and the Palisades and some other areas as well. And Traci will join us and tell us what's going on in City Hall, particularly with a focus on safety and, of course, on the homeless issue, the issue of the unhoused. Now, I want to put in a pitch for our constituent service team in our Los Angeles office, located in America's best named city, Sherman Oaks, which is my hometown. We have on the line Scott Alford, who directs that office, and Lisa Montano, who heads our constituent service effort. Let me put in a pitch for their work. Imagine a federal agency makes a mistake. It could happen. It could affect you. Could be a visa from somebody you know abroad who's trying to visit. Could be Social Security. Could be the IRS. If you have a problem with a federal agency, give us a call. We're at 818-501-9200. Talk to Lisa. She'll work very hard. She'll solve your problem. And then I, Brad Sherman, will take the credit. I think it's an outstanding system. And of course, our services are free. And I do want to put in a real pitch for getting your passport renewed. The State Department passport system, it's not broken, but it is just incredibly slow and has been for several years. Some of you who watch a lot of C-SPAN have seen me criticize Secretary Blinken for not putting the efforts into this. If you do have a passport emergency and you need to get your passport, a new passport or a passport renewed, and you're going to travel soon, give us a call at 818-501-9200. And I also wanted to put in a pitch for our work with the military academies, West Point, Annapolis, the Air Force Academy. If you know a young person who wants to attend, first, thank them for their interest in serving our country. Second, have them give Scott Abrams a call at 818-501-9200 in October of their senior year in high school. To get into the military academies, you need the same kind of outstanding high school academic record that you would need to get into a selective university, and you need an appointment from your member of Congress. That would be me, and so that's why we need to hear from you in October of your senior year in high school. If you're going to visit Washington, D.C., give us a call as soon as you know when you are coming. So give Melissa or Katie a call at 202-225-5911. The more advance you give us, the better job we can do of setting you up with the good tours. I do want to cover a couple of issues at the outset, and then we're going to open it up for questions. When we do, we'll take questions from those who have dialed *3 on their phone. A couple of things that are interesting here. Of course, a real focus on the debt limit. We are the only country that has a debt limit. Obviously, we've got to make decisions on how much money we spend and how much tax revenue we collect. Those decisions are made by every country. Then we have something that says even if we don't raise enough money to pay for those expenditures, we have to issue debt. Other countries do that. But then we run into this limit, and all of a sudden we might default, fail to pay what the government has promised to pay. If we did that, we could bring down the entire world economy. The fact that this is looming over us and we could reach this problem as early as June 1st is already hurting our economy. There are investment decisions that are not being made. There's foreign capital that isn't coming into the country. It's going to continue to hurt the country more and more until we get right up to the edge or until we cut a deal and deal with the debt limit. And were this to, if we went over the cliff and didn't pay our bills for weeks or even a month, that's what I think would destroy the world's, not destroy, but really impact hard the world's economy. It would be a significant recession here in the United States. This is an unforced error. We should simply have a clean debt limit extension. And then we should do what we do here in Washington often, and that's argue about taxes and how to bring in the revenue, and about spending and how to reduce spending and how to get us closer to a balanced budget. There is pressure on Speaker McCarthy on the Republican side to not bargain in good faith, because if he doesn't reach a deal, if he won't let us raise the debt limit, the economy will really suffer. And the economy will still be in bad shape a year from now, the election year. And people who really study these things carefully will look and say, well, what did the Democrats do? What did the Republicans do? Who's at fault for the fact that the country's bills weren't paid for days, weeks, or months? And in effect, who caused this economic catastrophe? But there are an awful lot of voters who will just say, well, Biden's in the White House, the economy's bad, I'm voting for the other guy, or the other woman, or the other candidate. So there's, from a crassly political standpoint, it might be to the Republicans' advantage for us not to reach a deal. So there's pressure on McCarthy not to negotiate in good faith. At this point, he seems to be negotiating in good faith, but we won't know until a deal is cut. Second, we just had hearings on the 3 banks that went under. For the largest, Silicon Valley Bank, was the most expensive to the system. Some $35 billion has been paid out of the FDIC insurance fund, and that is not free money. It's not tax money, but it's money that comes from assessments on banks, and one would expect that banks might pay just a little less on CDs because they're going to have to pay back into the system. This is going to be an assessment on all but the smallest banks. We would expect an assessment to recollect that $35 billion. This problem resulted from recklessness. It's not like the bank CEOs thought they were going to crash the bank, just as people are driving 90 miles an hour down the 405 don't think they're going to crash. They just think that by being a little reckless, it'll all turn out okay, and they'll get an advantage out of it. And so what these bank executives did is they invested in long-term bonds that paid more rather than the short-term bonds that would be safer. They failed to buy, in effect, insurance against interest rates going up and the value of the bond holdings going down. And why did they do this? Because that insurance costs money. And so if in 2022 they don't pay for the insurance, they get the higher yield on the riskier bonds, then their 2022 income is higher and the bonuses to the executives are higher. And then if the car crashes in 2023, well, that's what happened. I'm the only Democratic CPA in Congress, and I look pretty carefully at the accounting rules and the incentives that gives different private companies. And I'll tell you, there's an awful lot of public policy hidden inside accounting rules that almost no one pays attention to. So with that, why don't we take some questions from the floor? I think Traci Park will be joining us at the bottom of the hour. And if you want to ask a question, dial *3. Don, who's our first questioner?
First questioner we have is Deborah from Chatsworth with a question about the debt limit and its effects or potential effects on Social Security. Deborah, you are on now.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, hi, Congressman. How are you?
Deborah, I'm just fine.
Oh, that's good. First, I want to say thank you for all the work that you're doing over there in Washington. I really appreciate it personally. And I just wanted to let you know that. And the other thing, I'm a little worried about the debt ceiling because of Social Security. So do you think we're moving into the right direction now with Kevin McCarthy and the president?
This last week, things have moved in the right direction. Now, look, our economy is still hurt by this indecision. We're trying to get capital from all over the world, and we look like a government in a country that can't get its act together. If we, God forbid, the negotiations don't end up with a deal by the time, it could be June 1st, could be June 5th, could be June 10th, and it's hard to know exactly. Money's coming in every day, money's leaving every day, and knowing when how much money are you going to collect in taxes that are filed next week? You got to estimate. If the government doesn't have enough money, the administration would have to decide who gets paid and who doesn't. I think it would be absolutely wrong to not put Social Security right at the top of the list. There are those who say, well, the world economy means that you've got to make the payments on the Treasury debt because debt issued by the U.S. Treasury and the payments of interest on it are kind of what holds up the whole world economy. It is the one valuable asset that everybody agrees on. But the idea that we would make interest payments to the Chinese government because they lent money to the U.S. government before we paid Social Security would be, I think, pretty unpopular for a lot of reasons. So I think that Social Security will be paid on time in June and in July. But who knows? We've never done this. Some people will argue that we had a default of about 20 minutes about 10 years ago. But seriously, we have never not paid our debts, and that goes right back to the Revolution and the work of Thomas Jefferson. And to me, right up there, probably the most important debt is our debt to pay those Social Security benefits. Let's go on to the next question. And thank you, Deborah.
Okay, Congressman, we have, Donna. I don't know where Donna is from, but she has a question about reproductive rights. Donna, you are on now.
Yeah, I'm from Chatsworth.
Oh, hi, Donna from Chatsworth.
Hi. Yeah, we've actually talked before. I make sure I get on these conversations. So I'm going to do 3 quick questions or statements, okay? Number 1, if you guys are willing to touch my reproductive rights, I want to touch yours. You want to touch mine, I want to cut off your vas deferens. If nobody knows what a vas deferens is, it's where a vasectomy is done. Now, a vasectomy doesn't take very long, and it takes 3 bags of peas in a couple of days, and you're healed. An abortion, however, takes a lot longer. It's a lot more painful, and there's mental anguish as well as sometimes no mental anguish because you want it done. So I want someone screaming at the top of their lungs, you touch me, I want to touch you. You, sir.
I guarantee you, as a male politician, I will not be screaming, I want to touch you under any circumstances, but go on.
But please, you can recreate right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can't. You can recreate for the next 10 years of your life. Congratulations. I can't. So don't touch me.
What my personal situation is, I won't get into this call. Obviously, a lot of men have.
I'm not saying you. I'm saying
have had vasectomies. Every couple has got to discuss how many kids they want and appropriate birth control.
Grassley right now can reproduce. Okay. Any male member in Congress right now, depending on their age, no matter what it is, can reproduce. I, on the other hand, am old enough. I cannot. I can't, I don't care about that. I'm just making a statement.
I agree with you entirely.
I want it brought to the floor. End of story.
Women have the right to control their bodies. Men obviously control theirs. They either get a vasectomy or they don't.
But men are controlling my body. Women should be controlling yours in the federal law, because right now it's becoming federal as well as state law. End of subject. Next subject. The Constitution was written in regards to gun control or gun law.
Don, I'm going to limit you to just 2 questions. I'm going to limit everybody else to just 1. You've moved on to a second topic. That's okay, but not a third. Go ahead.
Okay, real fast regarding gun control. As far as I'm concerned, the Constitution, I'm a true American. It was made for muskets. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to kind of laugh about it, back then it was muskets. Somebody had to load it. It wasn't an AR-15, and I'll stop talking now.
On that one, I can say that I was a good student in an earlier part of my life, but the grade I'm proudest of is I have an F from the NRA. We do need reasonable gun control, and and you're absolutely right. When they wrote the Second Amendment, they were talking about muskets. Now we don't allow automatic weapons, but we allow semi-automatic weapons, which are far beyond anything that Jefferson and Madison would have considered. So I get your point, and more importantly, we're now in a predominantly urban and suburban modern world, and the idea that these weapons of war would be available and available without background checks if you just happen to buy them at a gun show is simply outrageous. And I'm sure I'll get another question about gun control as we move further. Let's go on to the next question.
Okay, Congressman, we have who's next here? Judy with another question about the debt limit. Judy.
Okay, and Judy, before you start, and I will ask you what town you're from. I want to remind people you dial *3 if you want to get in a queue to ask a question, or if you want to talk to my staff about any problem with a federal agency. So, Judy, where are you from?
Sherman Oaks.
America's best named city. Go on.
You know, in terms of the 14th Amendment, I'm just trying to understand why, instead of going through all these changes with a person with McCarthy, who's totally owned by these crazy people, why isn't Biden just going for it?
Well,
what's your opinion?
When you're dealing with the one thing that underpins the world economy, and you're asking people to buy a U.S. Treasury bond, you have to be sure that that is a fully legal bond. And in fact, the 14th Amendment has some language in there that just says, in effect, the bills of the United States should be paid. It doesn't quite say, therefore, the president can borrow money even if there's a statute that says he or she can't. And so you can argue it either way. No one wants to test what happens in the world capital markets. If you issue additional U.S. bonds, then maybe they're legal, maybe they're not. You can argue it either way. And the Section 4 of the 14th Amendment does read, the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for the payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing an insurrection or rebellion, shall not be questioned. First, it does say authorized by law, and of course, there's a statute that says you're not supposed to issue more than, it's a huge number, I think it's $31 trillion of debt. It's a strained reading of the 14th Amendment, Section 4. So it's a Hail Mary pass, and nobody, you want to win without betting on a Hail Mary pass. There's another argument that says that because the Constitution says you can coin money, that you could just print $1 trillion coin and use that to pay our debts. Again, it would be at least questionable. Okay, we're going to do a polling question, and we do this one every one of our town halls. This is question A. Do you approve of President Biden's performance as president so far? If you approve of his performance, press 1. If you disapprove of Biden, press 2. If you're unsure, press 3. While we're doing that, we're about to hear from Councilwoman Traci Park, who was elected to represent the 11th District, which includes Brentwood and the Pacific Palisades. Her mother was a school secretary and president of the California School Employees Association. Her father was a longtime member of the communications workers and an Army veteran. She's the first person in her family to attend college. She went on to not only attend college, but law school at Loyola. She has had a 20-year legal career, mostly representing cities as a municipal attorney, and as now representing much of the West Side, including overlapping with my district in Brentwood and the Pacific Palisades. Traci, what can you tell us about city government?
Thank you so much, Congressman Sherman, for inviting me to participate in your town hall this evening. It is a real pleasure to be here, and thank you for the very warm introduction as well. You know, I am really proud and honored to represent Los Angeles Council District 11, which encompasses our overlapping areas of Brentwood and the Palisades, but my district extends south all the way down to and including LAX, east to the 405 freeway. And I think it's one of the most environmentally rich districts. We have our beautiful Santa Monica Bay and our coastline, our Ballona wetlands, and of course our incredible Santa Monica Mountains. And for those of you who don't know, I just wanted to share with you quickly that I am chairing our city's Trade, Travel, and Tourism Committee. I vice chair our Transportation Committee, and I also serve on our Public Safety, Government Reform, and Economic Development Committee. So I have a very rich bucket of issues that I'm working on legislatively, and I'm really proud of the work that we have done in the short 158 days since I took office. So thank you again for having me, Congressman Sherman.
Traci, if people have an issue involving city government, what phone number should they call, or how else should they contact your office?
So the best way to reach our office would be to go to the Council District 11 website, which is cd11.lacity.gov. And you can see on that webpage, there's links to a lot of different city services, but also my contact information and all of my staff members are there and can be reached through the website.
Traci, you want to talk? Can you tell us a little bit about what we're dealing for the unhoused?
Sure. So thank you for bringing that up. Obviously, homelessness here in the city of Los Angeles is the issue that is top of mind for our constituents. We have benefited from working very closely with Mayor Bass on her Inside Safe initiative. I was very pleased that the City Council ratified her local emergency declaration, that we voted unanimously to fund her Inside Safe initiative. And I was able to partner with her on 2 operations here on the West Side. We were able to house over 100 people from the encampment around the Venice Bridge home. We also housed about another 50 people from a large encampment on the Culver Median in the Del Rey neighborhood. And we have a number of other operations that we are going to be rolling out in coming weeks as well. You probably saw that just today in City Council, we voted to approve the mayor's proposed budget, which makes an historic $1.3 billion investment in homelessness. The budget also includes funding for increased staffing and new tools and resources for our public safety partners at the fire and police departments. We are also investing in our city's infrastructure and housing and expanding city services. So this has been about 6 weeks of budget hearings at City Hall and represents the very hard work of members of the City Council to allocate our dollars in the ways and places that align with the priorities of the people in our city.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And of course, I'm doing everything I can here in Washington on that issue. We're now able to get what were called earmarks or community projects. And I'm seeking funds for Hope of the Valley for Alabama court housing that Mayor Bass asked me to try to deal with. That's there in Canoga Park. In the past, we've gotten money for Baby to Baby to help mothers who are either food insecure or homeless. And I look forward to working with the whole community on what has really emerged as perhaps our most important local problem. With that, I want to announce that we got the results from that first question. 71% approve of Biden's performance, 18% disapprove, 11% unsure, and those answers are almost identical to the responses we got in our last telephone town hall. So Biden's popularity, at least in our district, is just about where it was before. Let's take the next question from the floor, Don.
Okay, Congressman, we have a question from William from Sherman Oaks about Supreme Court ethics. William, you are on.
Thank you, Brad. It's not really a question, but it's more of a statement. Obviously, the Supreme Court appears to have a huge ethics problem. They're fighting over the last couple of weeks with the debt ceiling and some other stuff going on. It's kind of fallen out of the spotlight, but we shouldn't let it fall too far out of the spotlight because it obviously needs to be addressed. That could be one of the biggest problems we've got going on right now.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I understand where some of these Supreme Court justices are coming from. I mean, John Roberts and I were in the same class in law school, and the Supreme Court justices get paid a bit more than members of Congress, but less than people who have practiced law for 2 or 3 years who are out of that same law school. And if you've decided to go into public service, you've decided to live on a government salary, which I might add is higher than most Americans. And instead, you've got all these billionaires who want to be your friends and want to help you live an upper class lifestyle. And it's ought to be prohibited. And it may not be that a direct quid pro quo, but it creates a relationship and access. And it's hard to say that that billionaire doesn't have a matter before the Supreme Court. We all care about abortion one way or another. We all care about the major issues that the Supreme Court faces. And the idea that you would get to talk about philosophy and approach to society with somebody that's a Supreme Court justice because you can put them on a private plane and take them to a private island does not provide equal access to the other 320 million Americans. The rules for members of Congress are very precise, and if any member of Congress did a 20th of what Thomas did, they'd be out of Congress right away. And the disclosure forms are more rigorous, and the idea that, as Justice Thomas says, well, he heard in the hallway that he doesn't have to disclose something if there's a personal relationship. I mean, my God, what kind of practice of law is that you come to a legal conclusion on how you fill out your form, your disclosure form, based on you think somebody told you in the hallway 20 years ago that you don't have to disclose it? Of course you have to disclose it. And look, this society is being pulled apart. You don't necessarily realize how much it's being pulled apart if you live on the west side in the valley, because there's a range of opinion there and a kind of a center, but then you realize there's also Oklahoma, and so there's a range of opinion in the San Fernando Valley, but then there's another range from the valley to Oklahoma. And I hang out with the representatives of every part of this country, and you realize just and the point I want to make here is you need a Supreme Court that has the respect of all Americans to arbitrate what will be these decisions, these tough issues. We did have a Supreme Court decide, I think wrongly, to stop counting the ballots in the year 2000 and to put George W. Bush into the White House without a recount in Florida. But I accepted that decision because we had respect with the White House. And I'm involved in foreign affairs. You see in Pakistan, for example, a society that is barely hanging on to a semblance of democracy, and where there's still some acquiescence to the Supreme Court. I'm hoping that we never live with the tensions that Pakistan has. But if we do, I'm hoping that the court will have restored its credibility. And the first way to do that is to start having ethics. There are ethics that are imposed on members of Congress, weaker ethics on federal judges, and no ethics are imposed on the members of the Supreme Court. And John Roberts wouldn't even come and testify about it. So hopefully we'll pass statutes, but to show how divided the country is, Republicans are rallying around the unethical justice because he happens to be a conservative. That wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. 20 years ago, all of us would be for tough ethics on everybody. And now it's, is he one of ours? Is he one of theirs? If it's one of ours, then they can do anything. And that's a weakened level of democracy. Let's go on to the next. Oh wait, let me take one of our RSVP questions. I'll take one from Teresa Austin of Encino. Is Congressman Sherman advocating for fighter jets that Ukraine has asked for? Is Congressman Sherman advocating for further support for Ukraine? I hope he is, and will give Ukraine everything they need, not just to keep fighting, but let me see, Slava Ukrainia, or Ukraini, excuse me. I have been for providing weapons to Ukraine back before 2014, back before the last invasion. I had arguments with the Obama administration, who didn't want to provide any weapons at all if those weapons were lethal, and weapons are for the most part. I remember arguments with the Obama administration about what exactly is lethal and not. I took an extreme position that guns aren't lethal, that for these purposes you didn't have to call a gun lethal, only the bullets were lethal. But I think that was the key thing, was weapons should have been provided. And we saw Trump refuse to provide weapons because he was trying to pressure Ukraine into giving him political information. I've co-sponsored a host of bills, the Russian Digital Assets Sanctions Compliance Act, the Closing Loopholes in the Russian Sanctions Act, the Russia and Belarus Financial Sanctions Act. My background as a CPA and the fact that I'm on financial services has honed me in on making our sanctions more effective. We had the ambassador of the Ukraine do really her first congressional district appearance on one of these telephone town halls over a year ago, just as the invasion started, because I had worked with her month after month, year after year, to try to get support for Ukraine. That being said, I think it's important that we caution Ukraine to not use our weapons outside their own territory, and to launching attacks inside Russia is not something that we should be part of. We do need to keep this from metastasizing, and Biden needs to carefully calibrate exactly which weapon systems are consistent with that objective. Let's go on to a question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman. We have Rafi from Tarzana, who has a question about the bank failure hearings this week. Are live, Rafi.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And Congressman Sherman, before I ask my question, I just want to thank you for your service and also for your support of the Armenian American community. Thank you. Thank you very much. In reading about the CEO of Silicon Valley Bank meeting with the banking committee, Senator Menendez's question to him about the 30 supervisory notices that went to his firm, and him claiming that he had no idea that the company was in trouble, and therefore his securities transaction should not come into question because he claimed that they were planned sales. My question to you is, what measures do you think can be taken to prevent such activities from occurring, especially given that CEOs are required to sign off on the firm's financial statements, so it's virtually impossible for them to know that they're not in trouble?
Believe it or not, both the bank regulators and people in the banking industry were fooling themselves about the banks not being in trouble or not being in severe trouble. The regulators sent these notices, but as I admonished the chief regulator at the federal level, Vice Chair Barr of the Fed, he described all these notices in hearings and then said, and the banks didn't listen. And I responded, look, you're not a consultant. You're a regulator. I used to give advice to my clients, and sometimes they wouldn't take it. They paid me, and okay. But a regulator, if they don't take it, you can prohibit them from taking additional deposits. You can shut them down. But the way that the whole industry kind of fooled itself was a belief that, okay, interest rates have gone up, so our bonds are worth less. And people just, who haven't followed this will just have to take it on faith. If you have a 5 or a 10-year bond and it's yielding 2%, and now bonds of that type are yielding 5%, well, the one you've got is only a 2%er, and it's worth a lot less money. But our depositors are going to help us out because they're used to leaving their money in accounts that don't bear interest, because we were operating in a 0% world. You really, bank deposits weren't yielding much, and they'll just leave it there, and we'll benefit from the fact that our depositors are willing to leave their money in the bank account and they're not earning interest. And maybe that's because they want to be nice to us, because they love us. Maybe it's just because they're asleep at the switch. And guess what? The depositors didn't do that. The depositors, well before they thought that the bank was in trouble, they said, hey, I'm not earning any interest on my money. You got to pay me interest on my money or I'm going to take it out. And so this whole mentality made people think that, now, look, they were driving the car at 80 miles an hour. They didn't think they were going to crash, but they crashed. And the fact that the Becker got a $1.2 million bonus based on the idea that his bank made money in 2022 is outrageous. His bank lost a ton of money in 2022, but it was disguised as, quote, unrealized losses. So if you really look at it, they lost money. When depositors realized in March how much money they had lost, they pulled the money out. And then ultimately, when the bank was sold, they sold it for a negative $20 billion. That is to say, the FDIC had to give, I think it was Citizens Bank, whoever bought the bank, give them $20 billion for taking it over. So to think that you say you did a great job of running a bank in 2022 and should get a bonus, and in March of 2023, the bank was worth negative $20 billion, that's outrageous. And part of it is accounting rules that the banking industry has insisted upon. Part of it is regulators who have gone along with those ridiculous accounting rules. The fact is that when interest rates go up, your bonds and your loan portfolio goes down in value. And bankers have known this forever. And this was not unprecedented. Interest rates go up, interest rates go down. Back in the Reagan administration, we saw 16% interest rates, 3 times as high as we have now. You can't just build a house for a sunny day. Sometimes it rains. And this was not a 100-year flood. This was one of the things that happens in a capitalist economy. Interest rates go up, interest rates go down, and this bank was there's no way that this and we're working on statutes that make it more clear that that this bonus needs to be clawed back. We were able to pass tougher standards on clawing back unwarranted bonuses for the biggest banks, and we didn't, and we were unable to apply them to the medium-sized banks. Now it's time to make sure that this happens at the medium-sized banks too. But the regulators have got to be more, just plain tougher on what's called interest rate risk. The fact that interest rates going up and down can make it more difficult to run a bank. It's one of the 2 basic things that a banker has to be able to deal with. And the Silicon Valley Bank's CEO certainly doesn't. And oh, by the way, if you go onto my website, you mentioned Menendez's examination. I also examined these same bank CEOs the next day, and my examination of them and comments on them are up on my webpage, and I think they're in the same line as Menendez's, and I think you'll enjoy them. Let's go on to let's do another survey question regarding the debt ceiling. Which of the following approach do you support? 1, raise with a clean debt ceiling and refuse to negotiate with Republicans on anything else. That's choice 1. Demand a clean debt ceiling, and if that's if that's the demand, there's a possibility you don't make a deal. 2, raise the debt ceiling, even if as part of that deal you have to have work requirements on certain government benefits, and you have to make it more difficult for environmentalists to go to court to challenge energy projects. So 2, make a deal, and those are 2 of the things that the Republicans are insisting upon. And 3, unsure. So that's our survey question 2. Let's go on to a question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman. We have a question from Barry. I don't know where you're calling from, Barry, but the question is regarding the adoption of a digital dollar. Barry, you're on. You're on, Barry.
Okay. Hello, Congressman Sherman. My name is Barry Goldsmith. I'm calling from Woodland Hills. I have a question regarding, would the government prefer electronic digital dollar based on a token held in the bearer's phone or a debit card, or a blockchain transaction that tracks both sender and receiver of an amount for the transaction? And this is all in regards to upcoming proposal of establishing electronic digital currency.
Exactly which computer system you use is something that I don't think the government or I have a definite opinion on. But the key thing on a digital dollar is the know your customer anti-money laundering provisions. If you take $15,000 in $100 bills to the bank, a report it goes to law enforcement. And that makes sense. We want to make it harder to launder money. We want to make it harder for drug dealers. We want to make it harder for tax evaders. And we just had a hearing today on stablecoin proposals, and you can also see my 5 minutes of that up on my website, or you can go to the Financial Services Committee website and see the whole 2 or 3 hour hearing. And the key thing there is know your customer, anti-money laundering. and whichever accounting system you use, and blockchain is a newly developed and highly comprehensive bookkeeping system that has a lot to commend itself for, but it's got to be with the know your customer rules, the same rules that we have in the banking system now. Let me go on to a question from Diane Smith of Sherman Oaks. What are the positives and negatives of artificial intelligence? What are your concerns? And this has been a big issue. For me, it's been a big issue for 20, 25 years. I gave my first speech on this on the floor of the House back in May of the year 2000, and people thought I was crazy. And now, in the last month, between Elon Musk and a host of others, Wozniak, et cetera, talking about AI, what I said there now sounds mainstream. Short term, this is a powerful tool, and like any tool, can be misused. We've got to do our best job to control it. We should never give artificial intelligence an ability to kill anyone as a weapon of war without a human involved. Longer term, we just heard from some of the person that created the new chat system, and he argues this is a tool, not a creature. We have to make sure that artificial intelligence is a tool, not a creature. But so far, we're not spending much effort to try to monitor for or prevent self-awareness, ambition, survival instinct, or volition in artificial intelligence systems. Now, I don't think that's a problem this decade. I don't think it's a problem next decade. But I do think that in the second half of this century, it is the most important problem. And keep in mind, as long as we're talking about the creation of a new intelligence, there is another type of science that's also moving in that direction, and that is genetic engineering. Genetic engineering could create a 1,000-pound mammal with a 100-pound brain that will beat my grandkids on the law school admissions test. And so whether it is artificial intelligence or genetically engineered intelligence, there could be a new level of intelligence this century that well surpasses human intelligence. And intelligence is the most powerful thing on the planet. With that, let's go on to the next question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman, we have a question from Caroline, who has a question about the Postal Service. Caroline from Sherman Oaks, you are on now.
Hello, Congressman.
Yes.
Hello, hi. Well, thank
Caroline,
you so much for your service. I mostly agree with you on all your issues that you vote on, and but I wanted to ask you, what is your opinion of why President Biden has not gotten rid of the joy in the USPS? We are all wondering and scratching our heads over it.
There is a postal board. It's not like
right.
This is not a presidential appointment. There's a postal board. He appoints some members of that board. Some are holdovers from the last.
But we thought they had mostly been replaced already. There are arguments for and against. I do not think that he interfered with the absentee ballot system. I don't think that mailboxes were closed to make it harder to vote. I am concerned with mail delivery in certain parts of my district where I've received questions and problems. The answer is I haven't listed all the benefits and detriments. I know that this guy's been controversial. I think some of the attacks on him are accurate and some are not. And I'm counting on Biden to appoint the right people to the postal board.
We'll go on to the. He's got, I forgot to point out, he's got a 5-year term, which started in 2020. So I think the issue here is that he can't be fired except for cause until 2025. So we'll have to see whether this postal board gives him another term in 2025. I would think not. Okay, on the debt ceiling question, our answers are demand a clean debt ceiling, 56%. Give in to Republicans on a couple of those issues, 23%. Give in if necessary, and unsure, 21%. Let's go on to the next question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman, we have a question from Robert, also from Sherman Oaks, about the passport backlog at the State Department. Robert, you are on now.
Congressman, I want to thank you. I had a situation with an impossible passport. It was actually worse than expedited. It was urgent, and I thought it was impossible. And then I remembered from a past town hall, you said, call my guys. So I called Constituent Services, and Sean Reagan handled it unbelievably quickly, like a pro, and most importantly...
Sean, you got your brother to call in. Congratulations. Go ahead.
No, he didn't get me to call in.
I know, I'm joking.
But I was just so pleased, and I wanted everybody else, all your other constituents, to know how good this team is, because it was a dream role. I got an acting job in Canada, but the passport was going to prevent me from getting a dream job. I've been waiting for 25 years, and your team just made it like, okay, you got your appointment next week. When the State Department told me that I had to go to Tucson, Arizona, or to San Francisco for an appointment. So I'm very grateful, and I thought that was more important than a question.
Thank you for putting in that plug. Two things. If your passport has less than a year to run on it, renew it now and do it through the passport website that the State Department has, and they will get to it, but it will take longer than you think. But if you've got 11 good months on your passport, do it now. You'll get it on time. Okay, 6 months, get it done. If, God forbid, you need a passport and you need to travel, give us a call. And keep in mind that you may think, oh, well, my passport doesn't expire till June. I'm going to travel somewhere in May. That might be good enough for the U.S., but Italy may say, we're not going to let you in because you've only got another month on your passport. And so a lot of countries insist that your passport be good for 3 months beyond your travel date. So get your passport renewed. Don't call us unless you need us. If you do need us, give us a call, and Sean does a very good job. Let's do one more survey question. I'll ask this question about China. One possibility is that we slowly but steadily increase our tariffs on Chinese imports. This would lead us to import less from China. It would deal with the trade deficit. More jobs would come back to the United States. On the other hand, there are some disadvantages as well. So the question is, should we slowly increase tariffs on Chinese imports? Press 1, yes, to respond to China's unfair trade policies and human rights abuses. Press 2, no, increasing tariffs would increase prices for American consumers and anger China. And 3, unsure. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 unsure. And let's take another question from the floor.
Okay, Congressman, we've had a couple of questions, including one from Gil regarding federal payments, including salaries, if the U.S. goes over the debt limit. Gil, you're on now.
Hi, thank you for taking the question. I'm a federal worker and just wanted to know what would happen to my agency and our constituents and, personally my paycheck if this is going to be another, another shutdown scenario.
And most federal employees would get their paycheck the last day of each month. Is that true for you, or?
I'm every other week.
So what's your first pay date in June?
I'd have to look it up.
Okay.
I'd have to check.
Look, there are laws that apply to every other employer that say you have to pay your employees on time, and that takes precedence over paying your vendors, et cetera. This just illustrates what a catastrophe it is if we don't increase the debt limit. I think we need to pay federal employees. I said earlier we need to pay Social Security. Economists and capital markets experts will say, "Oh, you've got to pay your debt, your debt, your interest on Treasury bills, and pay the ones that are maturing." It's if we have a problem that lasts a day or two, that's one thing. If this, hopefully, we don't go over the edge, let alone spend a day or two over the edge. If it lasts longer than that, it's going to be terrible. But I think we have an obligation to federal employees. I think we have an obligation to Social Security. One can imagine defense contractors getting paid a few weeks late, but after that, I don't. This is why it's a catastrophe, and it's why we should never have a debt limit. We should always have arguments about how much to spend and how much to tax, and we should reduce the deficit. And we can argue about whether it's spending or taxes or a combination. Let's see. We have another question from the RSVP questions. But first, I'll announce the answers on our last survey. Chinese imports increased tariffs 63%. No, it wouldn't because of the effect on prices. 14%, 23% unsure. It's a stalker. That's more support for increasing tariffs than I expected. And we've got Bradley Shaheen from Sherman Oaks saying, "What is the plan to combat the Supreme Court's decision on Roe?" First, we responded in 2022 by passing the Women's Health Protection Act, which I co-sponsored. We passed it through the House. Unfortunately, it did not pass through the Senate. I've introduced the Medical Travel Assistance Act to provide up to $1,000 to women who, for medical care, need to travel from one state to another. The immediate battle is mifepristone. Over half the abortions in this country are done medically with a two-drug regimen. And frankly, although it's just about 55% are done that way, you could do 70 or 80% that way. And I think that DeSantis realizes that he can't keep people from mailing this drug into his state. There is an effort to ban this drug for ridiculous reasons that relate to how it was approved 20 years ago. Well, we now have 20 years of data to prove that it's safer than Tylenol. And that will eventually end up at the Supreme Court. I would support legislation that simply says the FDA is hereby ordered to permanently approve this drug. It's approved. It doesn't need any more approval. The whole idea of approving drugs is something that Congress has created and the Congress can decree. I have signed on to amicus briefs on this issue. And of course, I also co-sponsored and we passed through the House the Right to Contraception Act. Imagine here we are in the 21st century having to provide that. That should be beyond question. There was a major case in the 1960s, I believe it was, on that issue, and here it is being put up again for question. So I am absolutely pro-choice, and I think that if we work this right, the vast majority of American women will be able to exercise their rights. But by God, until we get a federal statute legalizing abortion nationwide and restoring Roe v. Wade, which of course I support, there will be at least some women who will find it difficult and in a few cases impossible. I think we can take one more question from the floor, and then we're going to have to wrap it on up. Let's hope it's a quick, easy question.
Okay, we got Gregory. Don't know where you're from, Gregory, but you have a question about the Constitution. You're on, Gregory.
Hello, this is Gregory. Hello, this is Gregory calling from Sherman Oaks.
We've got an awful lot of people from Sherman Oaks calling this today. Go ahead.
Yeah, the best named city in the country. What can you speak? I'm thinking that maybe it would make a lot of sense during the 2024 election year for the Democrats to propose at a minimum a mock constitutional convention for the year 2025 as a preparation for an actual, or at the very least, an enhanced series of mock constitutional conventions in 2026, which will be the quarter millennium of our American democracy. And there's so many things that need to be considered to update our Constitution. Brilliant as it is really out of date in terms of things like equity and environment and true democracy. For example, we need to have the popular election of United States presidents. Every Republican president who's been elected, I think the last three of them were all brought to office
I think that we could do mock ones that would be good learning experiences. I, for example, think that a parliamentary democracy, which is the way that the vast majority of democracies work, might be better when you have a whole variety of different ideological positions. If memory serves me right, a constitutional convention might be where every state is treated equally, and in any case would need ratification from, I believe it's 3/4 of the states. And built into our existing Constitution is unfairness as to how we change our Constitution. And to think that North Dakota and South Dakota would have twice as much power as the San Fernando Valley, twice as much power as all of California, when they don't have to combine, both Dakotas don't have as much as the North Valley and the South Valley, shows that built into our Constitution are some pretty undemocratic elements. We have seen demonstrated to us that a Democrat has to win the popular vote by over 2% in order to win the Electoral College vote. We see a U.S. Senate in which the Dakotas get 4 senators, California gets 2. So I hope that we can get a reasonable Constitution. Even when it comes to abolishing the Electoral College, I can't find any Republican support from that. My Republican colleagues know it's a crock, but they know it's a benefit for them, and they're not going to change it. So one of the infirmities of our Constitution is the unfairness of the process to amend the Constitution. And we'll see where we go from there. We are at a conclusion. at the end of this town hall, you're going to hear our voicemail system. I'm going to ask you to do two things. First, give me your email address, even if I already have it, so that I can send you a special email for the next telephone town hall. Second, if you haven't had a chance to express your opinion, do it on the voicemail. I will listen tomorrow, and not tonight because it's well after 11 o'clock. I want to thank you for taking your time, especially if you're a Laker fan. Thank you twice over, and hope nobody has spoiled the game for you. And I look forward to talking to people in mid-July. This is Congressman Brad Sherman.